Hey, what's going on, guys? Whether you're getting into comics from the MCU with the movies or the TV shows, or if you're getting into Marvel Comics through Marvel Rivals, which I'm seeing a lot of people doing right now, or if you're just looking for a new hobby to get yourself invested in, and you've landed on comic books and you've taken a liking to the Marvel Universe and Marvel characters, here are 10-ish, self-contained-ish graphic novels that are essential to the Marvel Universe and who these characters are today. First on this list is Marvels by Alex Ross and Kurt Busiek. Now, this is a very unique comic in that it's basically Forrest Gump set in the Marvel Universe, taking place from the golden age of Marvel Comics in the late 1930s up to what people consider the Bronze Age of Marvel Comics in the early 1970s, with the POV character in this comic being a photojournalist named Phil Sheldon. And Phil is the stand-in character for the average Marvel Universe civilian NPC, in that he's kind of an asshat. And that's one of the hallmarks of Marvel Comics. You know, unlike other superhero universes like the DC Universe or Invincible or something like that, where civilians practically worship the superheroes there, civilians in the Marvel Universe are just these disgustingly cynical ingrates who hate superheroes.
You okay?
Ah, get away from me, you freak!
But Phil, being the stand-in for the average Marvel Universe NPC, paints a more nuanced picture in that it's not that Marvel civilians are bad as much as they're just in a constant state of anxiety and they're just perpetually horrified. And it's hard not to understand why when you recontextualize the Marvel Universe from the perspective of just a regular person on the street. It also helps that this comic is painted by Alex Ross, evoking the legendary Norm Rockwell. It really adds to that feeling of the Marvel Universe being a real place and how horrific it would actually be to live there. Next up on this list is Spider-Man Blue by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. And this is one of those, if you only gotta read one Spider-Man comic, let it be this one kind of deals. First off, one of the greatest looking comics ever published. This was painted by the late great Tim Sale, and every page is just pure primary colored emotion. And this is the story about Peter Parker doing what he does best, reliving the past and beating himself up for feeling like he didn't do enough. You know, classic Peter Parker stuff. And the entire comic is framed as a flashback. Peter's making these Valentine's Day tape recordings for Gwen Stacy, or much rather, the memory of Gwen Stacy, and what she meant to him back when they were in college, going through all the things that he said, all the things that he didn't say, and it's not quite a one-for-one with the 70s era comics that this story is calling back to. It's more so Peter's rose-tinted nostalgia for his college days, colored by his guilt for what happened to Gwen, that shapes how he likes to remember that time period, and how he likes to remember Gwen Stacy. And it's just the quintessential Spider-Man story, in my opinion. Then we got Avengers: The Origin by Joe Casey and Phil Noto. And like the title suggests, this comic is the origin of the Avengers. In fact, it's the retelling of the first issue of the Avengers by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, but with some more modern storytelling sensibilities and the benefit of, at the time, 50 years of hindsight with these characters. I especially love Phil Noto's art. He's got a distinctly more modern art style, and it's fun seeing him draw these old school 1960s era Jack Kirby designs for the Avengers. In a weird way, it's a lot like Marvel's in that it helps make the Marvel Universe feel like this living, alternate history, with this story in particular feeling almost like you're flipping through someone's memory of once upon a time. Number 4, Daredevil Born Again by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. Not that this is in any particular order, it's just number 4 on my list. And I think it's safe to say that this is the quintessential Daredevil comic, because every Daredevil writer after this book came out has basically just been doing their version of Born Again. I mean, the most popular run on the character, which if you don't know what a run is shorthand for when a writer, artist, creative team is given the reins for a title, and that's the creative team that the audience is going to run with. That's why it's called a run, but I digress. Where was I? Right. So, the most popular run on Daredevil by far is by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev. Their run on the character is literally just Daredevil Born Again, stretched out to like 50 issues. and it's their run that heavily inspired the Netflix Daredevil TV show. In fact, Season 3 is, for all intents and purposes, just an adaptation of Born Again. This comic also establishes how street-level stories are told within the Marvel Universe, and more informs the relationship between street-level heroes and celebrity heroes like the Avengers. Number 5, we got X-Men God Loves, Man Kills. Just like with Spider-Man Blue, if this is the only X-Men comic you read, just let it be this one. This is the core thesis of the X-Men bound to 60 pages. William Stryker is this psychotic, mutant-hating racist televangelist. He's basically the Kenneth Copeland of the Marvel Universe, and he has this private militia hit squad called the Purifiers, who go around executing mutants and displaying their bodies in public. They're basically like the KKK or ICE, but for mutants. And Stryker's whole deal is that he thinks that mutants are evil, and that Charles Xavier is the Antichrist. So he kidnaps Professor X, and hooks him up to this machine that weaponizes his telepathy to target and kill mutants. And if that plot sounds familiar, well, that's because this book was the primary inspiration for X2 X-Men United. Again, it's the quintessential X-Men book as far as I'm concerned, and the art is spectacular. Brett Anderson and Steve Olive absolutely cooked with this, and it's by far one of my favorite looking comics personally. It also has two of the most iconic X-Men panels, for better or worse. The first being that panel where Mike Pence is pointing at Nightcrawler, that comes from this, and the second is when Kitty Pryde uses the N-word, or one of the instances where she does that at least. Which, by the way, far less out of pocket within the actual context of the book itself when you read it. Up next is Weapon X by the late great Barry Windsor Smith. This is the origin story of how Wolverine got his adamantium skeleton and claws. And it's, quite frankly, one of the most horrific, melancholic stories you'll ever read in your life. And it really helps that Windsor Smith was a consummate horror artist and writer, so the actual Weapon X process is approached like a horror movie. And at the end of the day, it's just one of the best Wolverine comics ever published. Enough said. Then there's Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom, Triumph and Torment by Roger Stern, Bill Mantlo, Jerry Conway, Mike Mignola, Kevin Nolan, and Gene Colan. Whew, that is a hefty creative team on this. And this is one of those sleeper hit comics that nobody talks about, but is actually, really good, and it's also really important to both Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom, respectively. It goes into Doctor Doom's origin and how his Romani camp suffered under the ruling class of Latveria, and how his mother was a witch who sold her soul to Mephisto to save her people. And I'm not sure if this is the first, or even one of the first stories to do so, but it really does humanize Victor Von Doom and show you why he is the way he is. And once again, brilliant art. Mike Mignola, who would later go on to create Hellboy, is the primary artist here, and he was just the perfect fit for an esoteric odyssey like this. Number 8, Punisher Max by Garth Ennis, Luis LaRosa, Tom Palmer, Dean White, and Goran Parlov. Now this falls under that self-contained-ish category, because Punisher Max isn't just one graphic novel. It's a series that goes for 75 issues or something like that, 60 of which are written by Garth Ennis, and as far as I'm concerned, nothing against the other Punisher comics out there, but this is the only one you really need to read. This is Punisher at his peak. It's part of the Marvel Max universe, which is in its own self-contained world without superheroes, and there's a few spin-off books here and there, but Punisher Max is ultimately a self-contained piece, and I feel pretty confident in saying that there's Punisher before Max, and there's Punisher after Max. And almost everything that you've seen with the character since has been shaped by Garth Ennis' Punisher Max run in one way or another. Number 9, Infinity Gauntlet by Jim Starlin, Ron Lim, and the late great George Perez. I don't think you need me to tell you why this is on this list. All I'm going to say is that, much like Punisher Max, this is another one of those self-contained-ish books. There's a 2-issue prequel comic called Thanos Quest that leads directly into Infinity Gauntlet. You don't necessarily need it to understand Infinity Gauntlet, but it's a beautifully drawn cosmic epic that shows you how Thanos gets the Infinity Gems, or Stones, or Soul Gems, or just whatever they're called depending on the writer. And Infinity Gauntlet really set the tone for how Marvel would approach cosmic space operas moving forward, and it's obviously one of the key inspirations for the foundation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And finally, there is Earth X by Jim Krueger, Alex Ross, and the late great John Paul Leon. I actually did a review on this book a while back, and it's just crazy to me how much this one comic has been mined for ideas for the main Marvel Universe over the past 20-odd years, which would also lay the groundwork for many of Marvel's movies, shows, and video games in recent years. Rule 63 Thor, Earth X. The planet Earth being an incubation egg for a baby Celestial, like in the Eternals movie and Captain America Brave New World, Earth X. Shala Ball is Silver Surfer, that comes from Earth X. Like, it's genuinely insane how foundational this book is to the modern landscape of Marvel Comics, and Marvel on film for that matter, and nobody really talks about it. It's also just one of the best comics ever published by Marvel. It's like 2001: A Space Odyssey, but if it was a love letter to the Marvel Universe. But yeah, those are 10 graphic novels that are essential to the Marvel Universe that every Marvel fan should have on their bookshelf, or at the very least, just give a proper shot and check out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie, thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, take care and happy reading. Peace.